like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Finance and Personnel Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Chris Irble.
Here.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Kelly Service.
Here.
Tom Selk.
Here.
And Tim Jaden, are you online? Yep.
Tim, are you able to? I think your microphone may be, there we go.
Yeah, I'm here. It said I was muted by the organizer, but I'm good now.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and please remember our brave men and women that are here abroad helping keeping us safe and free. Action on the agenda, on the minutes.
Move to approve the agenda?
Yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Action on the minutes from July 15th, 2025, Finance and Personnel meeting.
Move to approve? Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6A, resolution authorizing the redemption of certain of the general obligation promissory notes dated June 13, 2017. Joe, no.
Take that.
Yep.
So back in March, the board passed a resolution to terminate or to close TID number 4. So part of that process now is we're going through remaining audit, and there is one debt issue still outstanding. It's callable as of last year, June 1st, 2024. That debt is callable, but it has 2 more principal interest payments in 2026 and 2027. And what we'd like to do, there's cash in the TID district to pay those off. So in order to close the TID, we either have to set aside money, transfer it out to somewhere else to pay the debt in the future, or just pay it off today. The principal on both years is $30,000. The interest is $1,350 for 1 year and $450 in the other year. So this resolution would allow the village to pay that off now and then have a bit of a cleaner audit. Everything will be done. We'd finish the audit, date it as of September 30th, 2025. Those bonds would then be paid off. We have to wait if there's a 30-day period that you can't pay after this resolution is passed by the village board, and then we would pay that off at the end of September. And it would actually be less interest because it would be prorated to this year. So this resolution just is allowing the village to go ahead and pay off those bonds, and then we can officially close out TID number 4 without any future obligations.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Cool. B, discuss act on proposed 2026 salary and wage grade metrics for non-represented general employees and LTE seasonal wage matrix. This one's Joel, I think.
Yep. All right, thank you. This is a follow-up to last month's meeting where the committee and ultimately village board approved an amendment to our personnel policy handbook dealing with wages and salary administration. If you recall, we compressed the wage matrix for all general, permanent, full, and part-time employees. We had a basic understanding at that point what we had anticipated the cost of living increase to be based on, I think it was June over June numbers. Since that date, the Bureau of Labor Statistics have published their July over July cost of living increase, and that figure sits at 2.7%. Based on current policy, we would adjust the matrix to that figure. I think if you recall last month, it was at 2.9%, so it's roughly the same with a slight decrease. In addition to that, we have included the seasonal, summer, and LTE matrix in your packet as well for consideration. We have generally adjusted that matrix to the same CPI rate of inflation. I should note that due to rounding, what we typically do with that is we round to the nearest nickel or round up to the nearest nickel. So if you look at the seasonal wage matrix, everything ends in a 0 or a 5. That's done by design because it's just easier to administer for supervisors that both manage and hire for seasonal employees as well as payroll. It's just easier for the employees to know versus some odd sense to their figure. One other thing that I'll note that were changed in the seasonal matrix from previously is we had not typically adjusted the wages for cost of living for paid on-call firefighters and EMTs, as well as election inspectors. So we are proposing making that adjustment as well, versus every couple, 3-5 years coming back with a larger increase, just trying to maintain that rate to that cost of living as part of the matrix. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have or ask for your recommendation for approval.
Just curious, Joel, what's the level 1A reserved?
So that is actually ties to that seasonal wage matrix. So the 1A, if you were to take into account all seasonals, so if you were to pull up the seasonal matrix that's included in the packet, you'll notice level 1A, or I'm sorry, you're looking at the seasonal matrix, the 1A. That had prior positions in it. And when we went back, I think it's probably almost 3 years ago when we updated some wages for Park and Rec, we moved them to a higher level. So the concessionaires used to be under 1A. We moved them under a 1B, and we just simply left 1A as a reserve in the event that there's another position that would more adequately be filled within that matrix.
Okay, kind of figured. All right.
Has there been any, is this a competitive wage, and has there been any trouble hiring seasonal employees?
Not since we've made those adjustments, again, a couple, 3 years ago, when we made some pretty sizable increases to things like lifeguards, attendants, things of that nature. There's certainly positions that are difficult to fill, but I don't know that it's necessarily based on wage. It's just simply based on the availability and expertise of individuals. Let's use as an example, a dance instructor, gymnastics. Those are just typically harder to fill just because it requires a certain skill or knowledge set that isn't necessarily readily available versus a general attendant or cashier at the lake or at the pool. I will say that there are a few positions in here in particular that can be a little bit difficult to fill. One of those that we're dealing with right now is our community service officer. That is a temporary part-time position within public safety. It is a position at $16 to $20 an hour, kind of that range. That's just really hard to fill. Comparably wise, we're competitive to other communities that provide that position. But again, it's a position that if you were to ask an individual off the street, they could make $18 an hour bagging groceries at a local grocery store. Why would I want to work at $18 an hour to chase loose dogs or deal with difficult situations in the public? So we're comparable and competitive. It's just a position that's hard to fill given the nature of the role and then the competitiveness of unlike positions to that job.
Can you just remind me why certain public safety positions are in this matrix and certain ones are bargained and how that all works?
Certainly. So what we typically do is any position, any sworn position is typically adjusted based on the collective bargaining agreement. The exception to that rule would be the chief of public safety. So supervisors like lieutenants and captains, their wages will be adjusted under its own matrix and it'll be associated with the collective bargaining agreement primarily because so as to avoid compression issues. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes an officer will work towards a promotion into a lieutenant position and we simply do not want an officer making more than a lieutenant because there would be no financial incentive for a person to take that promotion. Mm-hmm. The exception is the chief of public safety. We have had those conversations in the past about moving that position as well into that kind of sworn supervisory class. But one of the concerns, albeit maybe a little unfounded to some degree, is that the chief of public safety then, there could be some comparable compression issues with other department heads. So if the rates of increase that are happening in the collective bargaining agreement exceed the rate of increases for all general employees, there, in theory, the argument was that the chief of public safety could make more than, let's say, the village manager. And so you have this concern or issue of hierarchy between the organizational structure and the wage that that position would make. So I think if you recall, we looked at that maybe 3 years ago now already, and it was decided at that time for keeping the chief of public safety in the wage matrix. Administratively, you could go either way. I think you're gonna have compression one way or the other, whether it's compression with the chief and either a peer or the village manager, or compression-related issues between the chief position and a subordinate within the department.
So I was more thinking about these paid on call guys and the community service guy and like they're all in this matrix.
Yep. So they're in the seasonal LTE matrix because they're really kind of viewed as that. They're, to some degree, you could consider them a volunteer position. So they're not paid necessarily per hour, they're paid per call or a structure similar to that. So based on the nature of the calls, they certainly get paid for training time as well, but they're not sitting at a station being employed per se, waiting for a call to arrive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to recommend the village board to adopt the 2026 salary and wage grade matrix and the LTE seasonal wage matrix adjusted as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. C, consider, discuss, act on proposed changes to the Village of Ashwaubenon organizational and functional structure. Joel.
Okay, thank you. This one is related to both 6C and 6D are somewhat interrelated. So in your packet is a revised organizational chart. This chart does not reflect what would potentially be proposed as part of the 2026 budget. So you will likely see an updated chart to reflect positions if they are requested and approved from an executive standpoint as part of next year's budget. What this org chart will do today is effectively give direction for, at a minimum, through the rest of this year, potentially if there are no changes in positions or structures for the 2026 budget, it would carry forward into next calendar year as well. With the resignation of the village attorney this past month, we are looking at administratively moving that position at least in the what I'll call short, long, midterm range, if you will, to a contracted service versus looking to hire in-house. The village board will be considering at their meeting next week a proposal from town council to provide that service. And so town council, who we've been working with on an interim basis, would effectively provide legal services to the village on a contractual per diem. So per month, they would have a flat rate, and they would provide the full gamut of legal services to the village for that flat rate. In addition to that, for a time and material basis, they would provide prosecution in municipal court matters as well. So that would be in addition to that flat monthly per diem for legal services. That's a change or a transition from what we've had probably over the last 10 or 11 years, I want to say. The village has had its own in-house attorney, that being Tony Wakowitz or Patrick Legal, where they provided that same service and prosecution for municipal court. So the org chart reflects that change, that we would move away from an in-house, in-staff attorney to a contracted service. And then as a result of that, we made some modifications to the village attorney position to be a deputy village manager, take on a larger role in some of the administration aspects of running the village, such as overseeing human resources, as well as risk management. With those functions no longer going to be incorporated into a contracted attorney, those responsibilities would fall back under myself as the village manager. So the org chart reflects that change. where human resources would be a direct responsibility and report to the village manager. Risk management would do the same. And then in conjunction to that, if you recall, we went through a process not too long before we received the resignation from our attorney, creating a position of a paralegal and an executive assistant. Moving to a contracted service, we would no longer need that paralegal because we don't have the in-house attorney. They would handle that through their per diem. And so we are proposing another modification to that position to just strictly be a confidential executive assistant, but they would provide that liaison type work through the village manager's office back to the contracted attorney. Therefore, the current Deputy Clerk 2 position, which was doing that, would no longer be doing that, and those responsibilities would shift into this executive assistant role. So again, 6C and 6D are related. The org chart reflects those changes. The Deputy Clerk 2 would just predominantly provide support to the clerk's office, and the newly created executive assistant role would take on those kind of legal assistant type duties and responsibilities once they're hired, and then that individual would sit within the village manager's office from a reporting mechanism. Those are the only changes to the current organizational chart to what is being proposed to you tonight. Again, it's just reflective visually those changes. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have about the org chart. Certainly, we'll talk about position descriptions under the next agenda item as well. So I think they're somewhat interrelated in that discussion.
With contracting out for the village attorney and everything that goes with it, I would imagine there's a cost savings in that?
Yeah, there will be a cost savings from the aspect of wages and benefits. So that is based on a per diem, a monthly per diem of about $7,000 a month. And what that would effectively do is provide legal services, so we can contact the attorneys in that firm at any point. There would be no additional charges for that per diem for those things. Now, there are additional costs, obviously, for prosecution. That's done on a time basis. And that's really because, depending on the month or the season, municipal court issues ebb and flow, up and down. Right now, we're in a very busy period. We have a significant number of OWI issues that are basically being filtered up to circuit court. And so it just takes a little bit more time and effort. Not every month is that way. It could be 3 or 4 months after we've resolved these issues that are currently working their way through the court system and not have any substantial cases again for several months. But with that, the per diem also includes some in-office staff time. So Ashley Lahaki, who represents town council, would actually work in our office 2 days a week, in addition to attending all village board meetings. So there would be times and days each week that an attorney would be present that can provide support to staff in the event they need that direct face-to-face conversation with the attorney. But again, of course, we can contact, we can email, we can set up virtual conferences with the attorney at any time, and that would be no additional charge to that per diem.
Okay, thank you.
Do you deal with one person in the contract situation, or is it a group of people or the firm? How does that work?
Sure. In this particular case, I think it's the best of all things considered. So you'll have one point person. So Ashley would be the designated or the appointed attorney. So that would be the main point individual from the firm. There may be instances or circumstances where other attorneys within the firm may take on a particular case or prosecute a particular matter. And so you can work directly with that attorney. So you may have up to 4 or 5 direct individuals that you'll be working with, but it would be well known to us what attorney is being assigned to a particular matter, and you would have that personal one-on-one conversation and direct contact with that individual. Oftentimes it's related on expertise too. They have a few attorneys that have quite a bit of experience on prosecution matters, so they'll handle most of the municipal court. Ashley is a very, very well-versed kind of general practitioner, if you will, and can handle all things, but they have another attorney on their firm that's very well suited for planning, land use and zoning issues, environmental issues, things of that nature. And so it just kind of depends on the matter.
Thank you.
That was a good question, because I was back in my mind wondering, concerned a little bit that, the village isn't shrinking like everybody, it was just an article, and I think in the Press Gazette, the growth of local communities, and we're one of them that had some pretty good growth. And that's gonna continue. So I had a little bit of concern that contracting out, or are they gonna be able to handle those extra duties as they present themselves? And a little bit of concern is are they gonna have a real good feel for our community, being here all the time? But there's a point person, right, like you said, and I guess that, yeah.
Yeah, there is a point person. They will be in office, as I mentioned, a couple days per week, providing that assistance. Certainly, I think a couple things with going this route, there is an out clause for us. So within the proposal, and again, that's not on tonight's agenda per se, but within the proposal, there's a 30-day notice requirement. There's no requirement that we need to be engaged for a 3-year or 5-year window. We could decide next month that, boy, this isn't working, or we want to go a different direction, and we would just need to provide that 30-day notice. And the same holds true for town council as well. If they feel like, boy, this is more than what we had anticipated, although I feel confident that they understand what they're getting into, they too can let us know so that we can move forward with a different plan as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
What percentage of communities our size have in-house counsel? Because I would imagine the majority have this relationship with some firm that specializes in this kind of stuff. And it's unusual to have your own attorney.
I think for if you were to look just strictly at population, that statement's probably true. I do think that given the nature of our community, we're probably, I would say, different in the respect that we have a pretty substantial increase in daytime population. So a lot of, in particular on the prosecution and municipal court side, we are pretty busy that way. In addition, we have a lot of growth. So not every community our size has the type of growth that we have. And with that growth comes a lot of legal review on development agreements and things of that nature. So I do think an in-house person is certainly justified here, but I do agree that the majority of communities probably have a similar relationship. And with that, town council in that regard, that's what they do, is they service municipal clients. They don't do private practice. Mm-hmm. So they have other municipal clients throughout Northeast Wisconsin, and they also work with the League of Wisconsin Municipal Insurance, and they support clients that are facing claims and litigation against them as well. So they're well-versed in municipal law.
I'll move to approve the amended 2025 organizational and functional structure as requested.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, motion carries. D, discuss act on changes of deputy clerk 2 and confidential executive assistant position descriptions.
Yeah, this is just simply, as we discussed in the last conversation piece, some minor adjustments to both positions. Just as a note, whenever we change responsibilities, that does require village board approval, hence the reason why we're bringing this forward to committee and board for consideration. But by and large, as I mentioned, the deputy clerk 2 position had been serving as kind of that legal assistant, if you will, handling things like issuing subpoenas, filing court documents, making recordings, things of that nature. What effectively this change does is it removes those aspects of the job and puts them with the confidential executive assistant. That change wouldn't be effective until that position has been filled. So as you know, that position has been sitting vacant for a period of time. If this is ultimately approved by the board next week, then we would begin the recruitment process shortly after that.
So the deputy clerk position is currently held. Is it Beth that serves in that role right now?
Correct. Yep.
So then all the work that she has been doing for the attorney will now go to the executive secretary position.
Correct.
And the executive secretary position is a replacement for the market analyst person, is that correct?
Yep.
But this would go back, if you would think about it, maybe to the position that Terry held and go back to that position description. So what kind of, I guess we're on deputy clerk. So I'll wait on the executive unless you want me to jump.
No, they're both under the same
Okay.
agenda items.
So then what changes were made to the executive secretary position since Terry held it? Are there any significant changes from that time period?
Yeah, so obviously when Terry,
Besides that switch with the legal?
when Terry was here, obviously we were transitioning through that whole process of moving things to the HR generalist position, which is Megan's role. So a lot of the responsibilities that were once held under that confidential executive assistant position, things like workers' compensation, family medical leave, those now reside within the human resources generalist. So there's capacity there based on the removal of some of those duties to that HR generalist to pick up the additional duties of that legal assistant. When we did attempt to hire that management analyst position, that position description included a number of things, and one of those things was to eventually be that legal assistant or that liaison as well. It just didn't work to our benefit when we had that position. So this is really kind of just trying to bring everything back full circle, if you will, but then making sure that the job duties align with the position credentials and experience and knowledge requirements.
So having kind of the confidential with the confidential secretary versus the deputy clerk too, so moving some of the confidential stuff to that position.
Correct. So this executive assistant not only provides support to the village manager, village president, provides some legal assistance type work with the attorney, the contracted attorney, but they'll also work directly with human resources as well. So it's important for this person to have that confidential aspect because they will be working, maybe not coordinating or managing like an FMLA request, but maybe administering something, right? Filing a record or issuing some type of notice or something to that effect that will require that individual to have some confidentiality.
So with the change of having an HR specialist now and taking those things off the executive assistant position, moving the legal in, we won't be overwhelming that position then, you feel, because of the adjustments and the movements otherwise? Because I'm sure Terry was very busy in her position years ago and to add more to it, but if it's taken off, then it should be able to handle it all.
Right.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, motion to approve the position description for deputy clerk 2 and the executive, confidential executive assistant position.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. E, receive, accept the general fund financial reports for July 2025 year-to-date. Greg?
Yeah, I have before you the general fund revenues and expenditure report as of July 31st. This is a year-to-date report, so you see large variances, but that's because the budget is full year. Actuals just through July. There's a lot of numbers out there, a lot of variances. Couple things to note. August is when we do our final tax settlement, so obviously that line will come in and anticipate that to be pretty much right at budget. Couple of variances that we'd expect by the end of the year. Interest income, we would expect it to be a nice positive variance. It's almost at its full year budget already. However, there'll be some offsets potentially in the area of public safety. Over time, with their attrition and their numbers, we did bake in the budget a little bit of attrition, but that just seems to be consistently not where we want it to be. But otherwise, it also gives us a little wiggle room if there's other things that may come in. For instance, if we start having a lot of snow and have a lot more overtime than anticipated. So we're on track. Most things are right at budget. Most people's operational budgets are doing the right at plan. So that's good. And we would have anticipated potentially having a little variance at the end of the year from interest. So we talked about that. We don't want to set our budget really high and then have to bring it back down when the rates come down. So that's a nice problem to have, and that's consistent with what most municipalities are doing. So this is just information only. If you have any specific questions, I can address those.
So we have to take your word that the revenues are coming in, right?
Well, right, I mean, they typically do, I hate to say that, they typically do, the intergovernmental revenues will, those are shared aids, those all start to come in September, when you get one or two in October, you get your final aid numbers. I've already seen the payout amounts, they're right where we budgeted them, so those will come in. Building permits or something like that, potentially, if we don't get a couple things, but funny thing, usually at the end of the year, all of a sudden something pops up and it plans, and we don't budget random numbers. We usually have a feel for some averages. So, yeah, I would say that we're fairly consistent. So it's a safe.
'Cause if you look at the expense side, you're 53.8% of the annual budget. If you take 7/12, that's 58%. So you're right on board. So which is good.
Yep.
Expenses aren't higher, which is good. Could you, what's with the fund balance? It's a negative. Could you enlighten me on that?
Again, because it'll be pretty much the $6 million at the end of the year, because if you look at the end of 2024, we have a $6 million, just over $6 million fund balance. We budgeted no growth to that. We would anticipate being right in line with that. It's just reading the numbers. So once we get our tax levy alone, that's going to be almost $12 million of revenue on the August statements. Well, if you add 12 million to revenues, all of a sudden that fund balance is going to bump to 5 million or something.
Yeah.
It's just the timing. Expenditures are much more consistent. Revenues are based, like taxes are a big hit, and then state aids, when those come in, those are the two big ones. That's probably 80-85% of our revenues, if not higher. So when they come, that's when the revenue kind of swings around. I will say overall, operationally, from the expense side, once we get through August into September is when it really starts to hold true to its form. We get through the summer, a lot of action, a lot of projects and activities, and depends Park and Rec, how did they do in the summer? Did it rain all summer? Maybe we didn't have what we thought we had, or other things that happened. So overall, though, I think everything's kind of right at plan. So yeah, that fund balance is goofy during the year until you start to see the primary revenues come through.
So isn't there a lot more overtime during the Packer season?
Yes, that's what it is, but that's all budgeted and planned for.
Yeah, right, that's fine.
They know that number. They know how many people work each spot. That's not gonna vary from what they budgeted. It's
Good.
just the day-to-day when they're down 6 officers and you need to fill the spots and you have call-ins, and it just gets a little crazy back there. So we anticipated to be some attrition. It's more than we anticipated, again, unfortunately.
All right, that was information only, right? Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions for Greg? If not, items for next agenda. Anybody want to see anything? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned.